This episode is made possible by our sponsor, Landmark College, the college for students who learn differently, offering comprehensive supports for students with ADHD and other learning differences, both on campus and online. Learn more at lcdistraction.org.
It's not about just what you love or want to do. It has to fit who you are and what makes you tick. And that who you are piece is not what skills you have. The cognitive is not the key to success in a job. What really matters is who are you?
Hello, this is Dr. Ned Hallowell, and welcome to Distraction. Today, I'm really happy to welcome a wonderful friend of mine. I don't know how long I've known Kathy, but it's quite a while. Kathy Colby is one of the smartest people I've ever met. She's been working in the field of psychology and testing for her whole life. She grew up around testing. She's the daughter of Wonderlic, Dr. Wonderlic, who developed the test that the NFL uses to assess all the players who get drafted. So she grew up around testing. She's endlessly curious. She's endlessly inventive and is always coming up with new ideas. And she is sort of the world's leading, not sort of, she is the world's leading authority on human instincts. She solved the riddle of how all people can be both equal and different in their creative efforts by identifying the nature of universal instincts that constitute individual modus operandi, which she calls your MO, your natural, innate way of solving a problem. I learned late in my career about her work, and it has absolutely changed the way I look at everything. She developed the most important psychological insight that hardly anyone knows about, namely the idea of conation. Most people know about cognition, most people know about affect, but most people do not know about conation. Conation is your natural, innate, and unchangeable way of solving a problem. The way I tell people to demonstrate it to yourself, imagine a pile of junk on the floor, and then tell someone, make something with that junk. What you do next is governed by your conation, your conative style. If you start asking questions, well, what do you want me to make of it? That's one way. If you start arranging the junk, if you start looking for help in making whatever you're going to make, or if you just jump right into the junk and start putting it together, those are all governed by your conative style. And this was all figured out by Kathy, and she has a wonderful test that you can take and find out what your conative style is. And it has tremendous practical application in business, in marriage, in education, and in the world of ADD, tremendously useful. And because most of us with ADD are what Kathy would call quick starts, and the problem is most teachers are the opposite, and that's what gets into trouble. But we can talk about that more. But the marvelous work she's done and the incredibly innovative work she's done is just such a huge gift to this world. And she and I are in the middle of doing a little research study on figuring out what are the best kinds of careers for people who have the gift of quick start or ADD, whichever term you want to call it. So, welcome to Distraction, the wonderful and gifted Kathy Colby.
Thank you. I'm happy to be distracted today.
And you're coming to us from Phoenix, Arizona, is that correct?
I am.
How shall we jump into this? Where shall we start?
What a funny question from you, because you never know where you're going to start, do you?
No,
One of my things about you, and maybe let's start there, I love how free you are to be you and how you've made you work. You are a classic innovator. You drive people to discover things and uncover mysteries and just sidestep all of the ritual and routine and all those things that people hate about the school systems. You're wonderfully defiant and get away with it. What I cannot express enough is my admiration for the fact that you are so genuinely, authentically you. That's what I love about you, and that's why you're such a good role model for people.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's your career ought to be the intersection of three circles. One circle is all the things you love to do. The other circle is all the things you're really good at doing. And the third circle is the things that people are willing to pay you to do. And where those three overlap, that ought to be your career. And so I was talking to Kathy and I was saying, now, what do you think people who have this thing called ADD, or Kathy calls it quick start, we pretty much agree they're the same. You know, what kinds of jobs, you know, do you think would be, you know, would satisfy those three circles overlapping? And do you have any early results from the op gig?
I do. Op gig, which is spelled OPGIG, for the option of having your own gigs, is a career software program that I've created, and I'm using it to do a lot of research. And as you know, Ed, one of the things that I have in this, and Ned and I have talked about research and how much we both care about it. I've put in an assessment tool as a part of this that identifies what you would be good at, and that's one of your rings. And it's what people don't pay attention to. Oh, I'd love to be a vet because I love animals. Well, guess what? You hurt animals when you're a vet. You don't play with them. It doesn't work. Vets will tell you if you love animals too much, they don't want to hire you. It's not about just what you love or want to do. It has to fit who you are and what makes you tick. And that who you are piece is not what skills you have, because that's a facade. That's learned behavior. What you learn, you can unlearn. What you need, you can get later. The cognitive is not the key to success in a job. And I used to argue with my dad about this all the time, from the time I was a very little girl, because his work was in the cognitive domain. Well, while I respected my father, the Wonderlic personnel test has nothing in the world to do with whether you're a good football player. It might have a little bit to do with whether you're a better quarterback or wide receiver. But what really matters in that, and in most other career decisions, is who are you? What drives you? What kind of patterns, as you mentioned earlier, really make you worthwhile? You contribute to them. You have a strength in them. That part of the brain is not in psychology books. It's not in brain studies. I've come to believe there is a protective thing going on in the world where all these books that have been written would have to be rewritten if they told the truth. And the truth is the brain has three parts: the cognitive, which is learned behavior; the affective, which is your desire, what you want; and the conative, which the ancient philosophers talked about, and it's how you do things. It's your modus operandi. I discovered conation about 40 years ago when I was rebelling against this overthinking stuff, and I decided I had to know more about it. And I learned a lot more about it by having a brain injury in a car accident where my cognitive IQ dropped in half. And I couldn't think through things. I had to go with my gut, my instincts. And I proved to myself that really was what mattered most. So OpGig deals with an assessment of what matters most. Who are you? What are your natural abilities? And I have found, to answer your question, that people with ADD do need distractions. They do need to do things in the quick start, unknowns, risky areas, but they also need, and this is really important, they need to avoid routines. They need to not be overstructured. They need to not work in bureaucracies.
Yes.
They need freedom to do trial and error decision making. So there's this combination of needing to experiment, explore, and innovate, and a need to not have to work within a structured environment. So imagine when I say that, every kid who has that MO, those strengths, being told there's something wrong with them, that they have a learning disability. No, the environment in most schools disables them in terms of using their strengths. Don't do that in careers. That's my mission, is help people find careers where they will excel, where they'll thrive. And it's pretty wonderful to watch those matches working.
And you've gathered this the OPGIG test from how many people so far?
Well, we have thousands and thousands of people who have taken it. What's fascinating is the amount of research and the hundreds of thousands of people who went into the research and jobs, because I founded Colby Corp about 42 years ago. Over all those years, we've been testing not only millions of individuals, but people who are managing jobs and in a position to hire people for jobs have been filling out Kolbe indexes, as we call them, on what they require. So the kind of conative effort necessary to succeed in the jobs that they're hiring for. So I have the only data that's ever been collected on the conative nature of jobs and careers. With that data, I can do the match between what professionals in the field have said a job requires and who you are and what's your natural way of doing it. So, for instance, if you're told, oh, you'd be great in sales, well, that's a stupid thing to say, because it really depends upon what are you selling and how do you get to sell it and what kind of sales role. Mm-hmm. So there's cold calling sales. That's more something that would fit for an ADHD person. And then there's the sitting on the phone and dialing for dollars, and the same, following a routine, a statement that you repeat. That's a nightmare for an ADHD person. So we've got to be more specific. So I've narrowed it down all the way down to more than 1,200 jobs or careers, because you can't be more general than that. You've got to be tying exactly to what kind of behaviors, conative behaviors, do you need to get this match.
Let's say someone's listening now and they have ADD. And they're saying, well, what kind of job is best for me? Can they go online and take one of your tests to get the answer to that?
Go to OPGIG, OPGIG.com. And they can just go there, and the test is available on that site. OPGIG,
OPGIG.com.
By the way, I am ADD, so I get it that it's hard.
Kathy and I are both very quick start ADD, whatever you want to call it. But
it's my favorite thing about me. I love being ADD. I wouldn't give it up for anything.
Me too. Oh, so
life
true.
Life is so interesting when you turn the wrong way. You just go somewhere new.
So OPGIG.com, and the test is there.
Yeah.
And that'll give the person suggestions as to what careers or what kinds of jobs they're best suited for. I'm gonna start giving this, because every patient who comes to see me, they say, what's the best kind of career for someone with ADD?
I love it. And we're getting such good data to see what people think, and then we tell them the truth.
Yeah. So I'll be able to, I give them my 3 circles, and I say, you can answer the question at home with your spouse or whatever. But the great thing about you is that you've been doing this your whole life, and you have Well, you've given the Kolbe assessment to hundreds of thousands, right?
Millions.
Millions. Wow. Now, if people want to get their Kolbe score, and in a minute I'll get you to explain what that is, where do they go for that?
Just to Kolbe.com, KOLBE.com.
So that's KOLBE.com.
/AT.
Kolbe /AT?
Mm-hmm.
It's around $50 or something like that?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it is the most valuable $50 you'll ever spend. It is magical. When you get this score, it's 4 numbers. Why don't you explain to them what those 4 numbers mean?
What I came to realize is, unlike an IQ score where there's a bell-shaped curve and some people are at the high end and some at the low, that with the Conative there was no right or wrong, good or bad. And so when I started to see the patterns of behavior that seemed to come from instinct, and I watched people of all ages. I ran a lab school and I studied kids and teachers and parents, and I really went out into the world and looked at artists and actors and academicians, and what I found was there are 4 basic patterns to how all human beings behave and make decisions. And so my intrigue started with, how do people make decisions or solve problems? Well, the first thing that I found was people make decisions by gathering information, but they gather it very differently. Some people gather information in the tiniest minutia, the details, and they need the historical evidence, they need proof. And other people can just bottom line it and kind of glance over and say, okay, I'll buy that. So I called that fact finder action mode, because I came to realize these are the way we take action. And it's how we react and interact. So that fact finder mode comes in a scale, and we all land somewhere on the scale, and I decided to make it a 1 to 10 scale. Then I started looking at, well, what do we do with that information? And I saw every human being, as they were making decisions, found a way to store and sort that information. It's kind of like computers do that, but human beings do it in far more interesting variety of ways. And I found that storing and sorting, which I called following through, was on a scale from doing it in a very orderly way to doing it in a random way. But what I saw was this random haptic type of behavior was as great a strength as the strength to do it in a very organized, sequential way. So there's no good or bad here, but there are significant differences. And then in the quick start, I found that was how people dealt with having to change their mind, having to deal with uncertainty. You can gather just so much information, but there are some things you can't gather because it's so uncertain. There's nothing there. You can't say, here's the evidence, because there isn't any. So how do you deal with these unknown, uncertain situations? And again, I put it on a scale of 1 to 10. And at the 10 level, they're motivated by the unknowns. And at the lower levels, it's not a lower talent. It's the talent for bringing us some kind of stability. And stability is important as innovation to the innovative process. So we need every level of quick start when we put together a team. The implementer, as I call it, is the 4th of these action modes, and it deals with the tangible world around us. It deals with tools and implements, space, and anything tactile. So the people who have a lot of 8, 9, 10 and implementer are your natural athletes. They're the people who deal with the protective services. Our firemen, our policemen need it. They contribute it. We see it in people who provide transportation. We see it in people who deal with fabrics and construction. Very, very important to our world. And then the people who resist, I always laugh, they're the klutzes. and they walk into walls, they trip over anything. But they also have an imagination that is incredible. So they can sit down and say, I'll know it when I see it. But they don't have to see it to believe it. And they create these amazing, fanciful, imaginative kinds of things in the world. So with all four of these, I found there was the notion that we all had to solve problems through some aspect of each of the action modes, but we do it differently, and through that difference comes our diversity.
Right, and no one way is best. It's unique to each person, and the trouble arises when someone tries to impose one way as being the right way.
A la the school system. Yeah, most school systems impose in grade school a follow-through. You put your name in the upper right-hand corner, fill out the form, don't skip a question, right. All that stupid stuff. It's not stupid if what you need is a follow-through system, and that's what you're teaching to. But I found 25% of the population initiates or has a 7 or more in each of these modes, and 25% actually needs to avoid doing these and prevents problems because of it. Well, when we get to junior high school, it starts to be read a book, write a report, remember the facts, take a test where it's all about pick one of the 4 answers that's most accurate. I can remember taking those tests and saying to my dad, I know what they want me to say is the right answer, but it's not my right answer. And he would say, oh, Kathy, please, 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 just write what you know they want.
That's so great. It's not my right answer.
Well, I could always give you a good reason why one of the other answers was more interesting.
Exactly. Absolutely.
That's what we both do.
Your dad is saying, please, just give them what they want. Oh, Kathy, we have to wrap up here, but I want people to know Kolbe.com/AT to get your score, and I urge you to do that, because with that will come a full explanation, and it truly will change your life. You'll understand yourself in a way that you just haven't before, or your child, or your spouse, or your employees. If you're wondering, what kind of job you should look for, or if you're in a job wondering what kind of job you should be looking for or transfer to opgig.com and take that test. These are really valuable tests. Kathy Colby is really the most. She's the best, and these you can take them to the bank. I mean, they are unbelievably valuable and vetted and reliable. So it's such a treat to have you on Distraction. You're just a genius, and you've done such valuable work. I can't thank you enough.
Well, as I said, I love being distracted, especially by such a wonderful distractor.
Thank you, Kathy. I'll see you soon.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
The episode you just heard was made possible by our sponsor, Landmark College, the college for students who learn differently, offering comprehensive supports for students with ADHD and other learning differences, both on campus and online. Learn more at lcdistraction.org.